No, your Nexus letter does not have to come from a VA doctor. And in my experience, it's often better if it doesn't. Let's just get this out of the way. One of the biggest myths in the veteran community, and it's one that's actually hurting claims, is this. The VA will only accept a Nexus letter from a VA doctor. False. Not only is that not true, it's legally incorrect. But it's understandable, because if you're a veteran, chances are you've asked your VA provider for help and heard, I can't write this kind of opinion, it's against my policy, I don't want to get involved, or worst of all, silence. So the belief forms. The VA won't do it, it just must not be allowed. And that false belief becomes the barrier between you and your rightful benefits. Let me tell you what I've told thousands of other veterans. The VA is required, by law, to consider competent medical opinions from private providers. It's not about who signs it, it's about what's in it. And today, I'm going to show you how using the right private doctor can be the move that gets you the claim granted when nothing else worked. Let's lay the foundation. A Nexus letter is a medical opinion, but it's more than that. It's a medical legal document that connects your current condition to your military service. It's written by a licensed medical professional, but with the VA's legal framework in mind. Here's the important part. Nowhere in Title 38 of the Code of Federal Regulations, in VA policy manuals, or in BVA case law does it say that the provider has to be a VA employee. Let's look at the law. According to 38 CFR, competent medical evidence means evidence provided by a person who is qualified through education, training, or experience to offer medical diagnoses, statements, or opinions. In other words, any licensed physician, nurse practitioner, psychologist, or other qualified medical provider can write a legally valid Nexus letter, whether they work for the VA or not. Now, is it true that the VA might give more weight to an in-house exam? Sometimes, yes. But if your private Nexus letter is well written, evidence-backed, and in the right format, the VA is required by law to consider it, and must provide valid reasoning if they choose to reject it. The power is in the content, not the clinic. Let's talk about what happens if you don't know this, or worse, believe the wrong thing. If you sit back and wait for your VA doctor to write a Nexus letter, you could wait for months. You may not get a letter, you start to lose hope, and you get denied. And it's not your fault. You thought the system would help you. But the VA providers are often, they often feel prohibited from writing legal opinions. They're discouraged from participating in compensation processes, or they just simply feel overwhelmed and afraid to get involved. Some veterans will go 2 to 3 years waiting for a doctor who was never going to help. That is time lost. That's back pay gone. That's unnecessary suffering. But now, let's flip it. Say you find a licensed experienced provider who's done this before. Someone who knows how to review your VA and civilian medical records, use VA language such as at least as likely as not, reference military exposures, timelines, and diagnoses, cite peer-reviewed literature, and build a clear rationale that the VA has to engage with. You've now completely changed your odds. I've seen denials get flipped on appeal. 0% ratings jump to 70% and full back pay restored. Not just because a veteran got the right Nexus letter, but they did it at the right time. If you're serious about your claim, this is a decision that can change your entire future. Let me walk you through 3 real veteran stories that show the power of private Nexus letters. First, Kevin. He served in the Army. PTSD was his primary service-connected condition. He developed OSA years later, gained weight from medication, struggled with sleep, and had fragmented nights. He filed a secondary claim for sleep apnea due to his PTSD. Denied. The C&P examiner wrote, "No evidence of direct causal relationship." Kevin assumed the VA mental health provider would help, but she told him, we're not allowed to write that kind of letter. So he waited, and nothing changed. So Kevin eventually came to us. We reviewed his records, documented how PTSD led to disrupted sleep, hyperarousal, his weight gain, and medication-induced sedation, all of which are well-known documented risk factors for OSA. We wrote a Nexus letter citing the VA's own M21-1 adjudication manual, DSM-5 correlations, peer-reviewed articles from sleep medicine journals, and 60 days later, 50% granted for sleep apnea. Combined ratings jumped to 100% and $41,000 in back pay. Next, let's talk about Maria. So Maria was a Navy veteran who survived military sexual trauma. She had severe IBS, panic attacks, and chronic insomnia. She had a VA diagnosis for all of it, but none of her conditions were connected. Why? Because the VA said, there's no medical evidence linking your IBS to your service. She had the documentation, she had the symptoms, but no bridge, no nexus. So we stepped in. We wrote her 2 letters, one for IBS secondary to PTSD, and one for insomnia and panic attacks as part of the anxiety spectrum. We incorporated lay statements, referenced the mind-gut axis, cited data from the NIH, and broke down how PTSD alters autonomic regulation and gastrointestinal function. And the result? Her PTSD rating was increased, IBS and panic attacks became service-connected, and she qualified for TDIU. Lastly, James. He had been denied for his back condition 3 times. Each time the VA said, no link to military service, despite his MOS being infantry and his record showing repetitive trauma. He had x-rays, MRIs, and even a surgery, but no Nexus letter. He used a civilian orthopedic surgeon who had no VA experience. And that surgeon wrote, patient has chronic back pain. I cannot comment on service connection. So guess what happened? The VA tossed it out. So he came to us. We wrote a Nexus letter that stated veterans' degenerative disc disease is at least as likely as not caused by repetitive axial load trauma sustained during airborne operation and ruck marches during military service. We included citations from spine journals, MOS physical requirements, and VA case precedents. 90 days later, 40% rating and $23,000 in back pay. Let's walk through what you need to understand as a veteran navigating this decision. The VA must consider all competent medical evidence, according to 38 CFR. And it clearly states competent medical evidence may be provided by a person who is qualified regardless of whether they are affiliated with the VA. As long as the provider is licensed, the opinion is based on adequate facts, and the rationale is provided, the VA has to consider it. And if they choose not to, they have to explain why. And so that opens the door for a strong appeal. If you want to dive deeper into how CFR 38 protects your right to use a qualified provider for your Nexus letter, check out our YouTube channel, where we break down this further in our podcast with real examples, VA case law, and what it means for your claim. Just follow the link and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Now, what about some of the other things? Private Nexus letters often provide better quality. And let's be real, VA providers are busy. Most are overworked. Some don't even know what a Nexus letter is. Private providers typically have the time to review records, can customize the opinion to your unique case, aren't restricted by VA policy, often understand disability law and rating criteria better, and so they can craft a letter that is clinically accurate, legally aligned, and strategically structured. Also, you don't need more than just a letter. You need a strategy. Not all letters are equal. The difference between a denial and approval may come down to one phrase, at least as likely as not. One citation to medical literature, or one explanation of how your symptoms began or were aggravated. That's what we do at Xterra Health. We're veteran-owned, and we exist for one reason, to help other veterans win their claims. We build Nexus letters that are backed by medical evidence, supported by research, crafted to meet VA standards, and written by providers who understand this battlefield. We don't just check boxes, we build weapons. Let's recap. Yes, a private doctor can write your Nexus letter. And no, it doesn't have to be a VA provider. And yes, the VA must consider it. And often, the right private Nexus letter is your best shot at a win. But here's a question I hear more and more lately, especially with the rise of AI. Can I just write my own Nexus letter? Like, can't I just use ChatGPT and have it do it for me? I get it. We're in the age of do-it-yourself and instant answers, but the answer is more complicated than you think. And getting it wrong could actually destroy your claim. In the next video, I'm going to break that down. Is it legal to write your own Nexus letter? Will the VA accept it? Can AI platforms like ChatGPT be used as a tool, or is it a trap? Click here to watch the next episode. And remember, don't guess with your benefits. Let's get your claim mission ready. Xterra Health, veterans serving veterans, service beyond self.